Okay, so for those of you guys who just joined us, right, a warm welcome, right? So for today, we are doing Vantage Live Analysis session. Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Lee Sing. I provide FX advisory to institutional clients, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions with regards to the analysis presented today, if you are with us live, right, please put it under the questions tab. If not, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just a quick disclaimer, the information presented here is not to be treated as investment advice. It's for educational purposes only. So this is the agenda that we will be covering for today. We will first take a look at the key economic events, right? So for this, we will hop on to the economic calendar just to see what are the high impact news events coming up for this week. And following which, we will be taking a look at our trade setups. So for trade setups, I'm looking mainly at dollar index as well as euro dollar and gold, right? So those are the three trade setups that I would like to take a look at. And if there are any other trade requests or any other chart setups requests, right? Or it doesn't have to be in FX. If you have specific TA analysis that you want on equities, indices, please feel free to put it under the questions tab as well. And then, of course, right, throughout the session, we have it open for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just feel free to put it either under the Zoom chat or the Q&A box. Okay, so before we take a look at the trade setups on dollar index, euro dollar, and gold, right, let's just take a look at the economic calendar. So for that, let me just switch to the economic calendar. Okay, so this is the economic calendar, right? You can either use Vantage Markets economic calendar. So for that, you can just go to vantagemarkets.com. Right, so this is the economic calendar. Let's go to vantagemarkets.com and just give it a while to load. Okay, and once you go to the website, just under education and tools, under economic calendar, so you can just click on this and it should bring us to the page. So this is actually categorized according to the different impact, right? So the high impact ones would be the ones in red, right? And then you have the ones in yellow and gray. So the medium impact as well as the low impact news. Right, so these are the ones that we have, right? You can see here. So another source that I would like to look at that I use often would then be Forex Factory. So you can use them interchangeably, right? So on Forex Factory, it's mainly just the G7 currencies. So we're looking at your dollar, euro, pound, ZQV, and CAD. So those are the ones, right? You can filter according to the impact as well. So I'm selecting only the medium and high impact news events. So this will be, for example, your retail sales data. It's a measure of your domestic growth, as well as interest rate decisions, right? So these are the key ones that are coming up. So you can see that RBNZ just held interest rates. Right, so sorry, RBNZ raised interest rates by 25 basis points. Okay, and then you have your CPI data. So CPI measures inflation, right? So if CPI data turns out to be better than expected or higher than expected, right, then there's more pressure on the central banks to raise rates to fight inflation. So these are the key ones to watch. So usually you can look at it just based on the different, the week, right, throughout the week. So upcoming, right, key news events that we have would be, of course, on FOMC minutes as well as the labor market, right? So unemployment claims data. So this would give insights to the labor market and pending home sales data. So mainly revolving the dollar, right? You can see the upcoming key events. Okay, and of course the core PCE price index. So this, it's another measure of inflation. It's actually Fed's preferred measure of inflation. So you can see that this itself would also give more clues as to whether there's more pressure for the Fed to put rates on hold or whether to continue hiking rates. So this is one, right? Of course, there are a lot of other factors to consider. Okay, so this is in terms of the fundamentals. So with that in mind, right, let's take a look at our technicals. Okay, so for technicals, right, I'm just going to go to the charts. Okay, so let's open up a new chart, right? First, we want to take a look at dollar index, right? So the dollar index itself is basically a basket, basically it's a measurement, right, that compares dollar to a basket of currencies, right? So those are usually the major trading partners like euro. So that will be in the basket as well. If you take a look at dollar index, right? So let me just select dollar index, right? Let's take a look at it from the different time frames, right? So on the monthly time frame first, you can see that prices are currently sitting on this resistance turn support level. So if we draw a horizontal line across, let me just remove all these indicators, right? So you can see over here, when price comes into this zone, we have a resistance level that price rejected strongly twice. So basically we have, oops, sorry. So we have a resistance level here, right? And if I were to extend this line across, you can see that price came in, right? And currently sitting on this zone. Okay, so as with all levels, support resistance, right? I like to highlight them as a zone rather than just a specific level. So it gives us more leeway to work with. So over here, you can see the price came up, right? It broke above the resistance, retested again. And currently it's again testing this area, right? And once you go down to the lower time frame, so on the monthly, it's potentially sitting on some kind of support level. And when we move down to the weekly time frame, we can see that price came in. We form three bottoms here, 1, 2, and 3, right? So price came in, we saw buying pressure here, pushing prices higher. And if you move down to the daily time frame, on the daily time frame, we can see that price came into the support zone, right? And we saw consolidation here. So in terms of structure and looking at just supply chains, you can see that price came in, tap into this support region before it failed, and the subsequent price action that follows after, right? So if I were to zoom out to the 4 hours time frame, you can see that price broke below the structure that we're seeing here. And once price broke below structure, it then retested, right? So then that's where the concept of support resistance levels come in, right? So when price breaks this support level, retested again as resistance pushed lower. We're seeing bearish order flow as well in terms of subsequent lower lows and lower highs. And one thing to note is that you can see these areas, right? So the extreme of these zones also serves as supply. So what we mean that by this is that if you go back to the 4 hours time frame, this region itself, right? So if we were to notice or rather zoom into this area that we're seeing here, you can see that price came in, right? It broke structure once over here. So it broke below the low, retested. So once it broke below the support level, and this is a support level because we saw that rejection here, right? And when price comes into this zone again, you can see that it broke slightly below, retested this region. And then what happens after is that price continues to the downside. And once this is established, right, what we're seeing here is that this area, which causes that pullback and a retest back into this resistance zone, it's now serving as a supply. So you can see here, right? So we just follow through with this supply region. Price came in, it broke below the low, retested this area as a supply. And what we see after is that this region then becomes the new supply zone. If we extend this area to the left, to the right, you can see that price came into this zone again. And this still held as a supply. So this structure continues, right, in terms of your bearish structure. So bearish structure is formed when market shows clear lower lows and lower highs. And the assumption is that we are expecting the trend to continue to the downside, right? So any pullback itself could be an opportunity to sell, right, in the direction of the trend. And the change in trend happens when we see that change in structure. So if prices continues forming lower lows and lower highs, right, and the subsequent pullback that we're seeing, right, when price pulls back into a resistance area, for example, right, it should in a downtrend, right, continue to move lower or even sweep above this high if it continues to the downside. But if you start seeing a change in structure, So change in structure comes when there is of change, right? So essentially price breaking above the previous high. And what happens after is that you can see clear higher lows and higher highs being formed. This itself, it's a bullish market structure, right? So when we see that change happens, this is when there's a sign that there's a change in trend. So of course, on the lower time frames, right, this structure would not hold as well. It can be very choppy, right? So it's more noisy, right? So there's a lot of more noise in the lower time frames as compared to, let's say, on the higher time frames. So if you see this kind of structure being formed on your 4 hours, daily, weekly, right, then this is clearer. So if we can take a look at this in details on euro dollar on the daily time frame, right, just to see how this example applies. But for now, right, taking a look at what we have currently, you can see that supply chains start forming here. And if I were to move even more to the left, right, to the right, you can see that this last supply chain that was being formed. So for one, right, we have a change in structure here. So you can see clear downtrends in forms of lower lows and lower highs, and price pulled back, made a new high, and it broke structure following that, right? And you can see that change in structure happens when this high, it's broken. So price broke above this high. And what happens, it's again, right, we see price following in a bullish structure, right? So you can see higher lows, higher highs being formed, and price holding in a channel here. So that's the idea, right? So that's the picture on the 4 hours, right? In terms of structure, we're seeing bullish structure with the most recent moves. So let me just clear all these markings, right? So we will keep the main levels, and the main levels are found on our weekly time frame. So the main levels are the zones marked out in blue. And the reason why we mark these areas out, it's because of how price interacted with the zones. So if you take a look at how price interacted with this area, right, even if I were to put it close, you can see that there is this horizontal line that I can draw across that very neatly divides this chart, right? So this area, price came in to test both the bottoms and tops, right? And we're seeing this very clear divide. An area that we would not like to draw, right? So for example, if I were to draw this, let's say I were to draw this zone here. So this area itself, let's say if I were to put a horizontal line across like this, right? This might not be a good zone or an area, right? Simply because of how price reacted. You can see that price did not actually follow through with these areas, right? Did not respect it as a support or resistance, right? Just whipsaw right through it. So in this case, right, this is not an area that we want to consider. But if you take a look at this region that we highlighted, right, you can see how price reacted. We're not saying that when price comes into this zone, we're seeing an immediate reaction, or we're seeing price reverse to go slightly lower. But the idea that when price comes into this zone, right, this is an area that we want to consider, and we want to watch out for any structure change. Right, if there's any change in market structure, then that's a sign that we could be seeing a reversal. So those are things that we want to take note of, right? So I'll just keep this area here. And of course, the support zone that we're seeing price pulls back into. So that's the picture on the weekly, right? So I'll leave the weekly zone as it is. And then we have our daily area. So if you take a look at the daily, right, we're seeing price, again, that structure change, subsequent lower lows and lower highs, and then following which a break of this area, the break of the resistance retested as a support before it continues to the upside. Another thing that we would like to check, right, on the daily time frame is to see if there is any kind of support or resistance areas. I mean, sorry, not support resistance, but rather any form of channels, right, in terms of ascending trend line or even ascending channels. So this is another one that we would like to consider. Right, you can see that for any channel to be valid, right, I consider a tap of the support resistance levels at least twice. So if price tested the resistance of an ascending channel and support of an ascending channel twice, then that's a valid channel. That's where we are right now in terms of the daily chart. Another thing to consider is, of course, right, this region. So again, right, just like how we did it on the weekly time frame, on the daily time frame, the idea is similar. So if you can find an area or a zone which neatly divides this chart, right, as both support resistance. So the idea is that if I draw a horizontal line across, we don't see price whipsawing around, but rather at this particular zone, right, we're seeing some kind of interaction. So price coming in, acknowledging those zones before it actually moves higher or lower. So that's another level to consider, right? So along with this zone, we want to ensure that there is some kind of retracement level that lines up with it. So if this is the impulsive move down and we're seeing that pullback, then this is the highest point and this is the lowest point. So when we do this, right, essentially we're trying to find resistance using the lowest point and highest point, right? So these are our reference points. So by doing that, what we're trying to do is that if we did a retracement from high to low at 50%, essentially saying that from this range, right? So this it's anywhere from 105.80 to 100.50, right? So this range, right, is 50% of this whole move. Okay, so in this case, we can see that the 50% it's no longer valid, right? So this it's not valid, and the reason why it's not valid is because price came and it broke above this zone. It broke above the 50% retracement. So generally, I focus more on the zones. This retracement levels, we can see that there's almost at every single interval, right? We're seeing a level. So while they are important, right? If they line up with the zone, it will be even better, right? If not, this is just one area to consider. Another way you can use this is for your stop losses, right? So let's say if you are taking a stop loss just slightly above this high, right? For instance, if you're taking a short position slightly above this, you want to consider putting stop losses just slightly above the retracement level. So of course, this is not the best example because it's on dollar index, right? And what we want to consider is other tradable instruments. Okay, so this is the resistance area. We have the retracement level, right? So this is one area to consider. Of course, if we are expecting a pullback back into the support region, and this is a support level, you can see a resistance and support level here. Again, price coming in, pushing to test it as resistance above. And this break is represented by the strong bullish candle. You can see hardly any wicks with the zone, and then a slight pullback before it continues to the upside. So in this case, right, resistance and support area. If you take a look at this region, right, you can see even in close, right, this chart itself, right, there is a resistance and support area here. Okay, so this is a support area, but of course, right, if we're seeing that reversal on the lower time frame, if we're on the 15 minutes time frame or even a 1 hour time frame, we should first see that change in structure happen. So again, right, what we mean by this, so once there is a change in structure, so if you take a look at the highs and lows, we're seeing basically price forming higher lows, higher highs, and it's forming equal, or rather it broke above this high, right? So pretty much equal highs and lows, right? So we're waiting for a new low to be formed, some structure to be formed here before a break of that structure. That's one, right? So looking at the 1 hour time frame, where we're seeing a huge, not that big, but a huge reversal here. Right, so slight reversal, pushing back into this zone. So that's the picture on the 1 hour time frame, right? So if you go down to the 15 minutes time frame, you can see that with the most recent moves, this is basically the last support region that we're seeing, right? So if price breaks below this area, then that's the first sign that we could be seeing a change in structure on the lower time frame. Okay, so right now, at least on the 15 minutes, price has yet to break this low. So where we are currently on the 15 minutes, right, still not bearish. Okay, so that's the picture. So we need price to break below this low as a sign of downside confirmation here. Okay, let me just put this as the downside confirmation. Okay, so that's the idea for dollar index. So if we are expecting a deeper pullback, we need price to break below this for price to continue trending lower. So that's on dollar index, right? Let's take a look at euro dollar next. Let me take a look at this, right? So on euro dollar, you can see that on the higher time frame first, we're seeing a bearish structure here, right? So price rather is sitting on support resistance, coming in to test this region and a push above it and retested this area again as a resistance. If we did a retracement level of this move, right, from high to low, so this is the pull leg and the pullback. So if we do a retracement level of this, taking these 2 points as reference points, you can see that from the highest to lowest point, this region itself, the 50% retracement lines up with this zone, right? So this is an area we have on the monthly time frame. And then we move down to the weekly time frame. So on the weekly time frame, we are seeing that change in structure, right? So price coming in, demand areas are being followed, right? So this blue zones that we've highlighted, if you go to the daily, maybe this is clearer, but the idea is that when price comes into this zone, right? Previously, I mentioned concept of how looking at higher times, right? If we're seeing that wick and a very small body, essentially a doji here, right? This represents a range on the lower time frame. So when price comes into a range, right, before we see that break off the range, this range then serves as a supply demand area. So we see that interaction on the daily time frame, right? So we have this wicks and then price breaking above this wicks, and once this is broken, right, then the candle that held before the break then becomes our demand, and we see that demand chain follows through. So once price comes into this area, right? So the blue zones that we've highlighted previously are our demand areas. And right now you can see that this area here, right? Prices are currently sitting on this demand zone, which we extended across. So this was covered last week, right? And when you move to the 4 hours time frame, you can see on the 4 hours time frame, we have also highlighted this descending channel. So again, on the 4 hours, right, any descending channel for it to be considered valid, we need price to test the support and resistance area at least twice. So we have this price coming in to test the zone, and then again the support area here. Right. So where we are on the 4 hours time frame, right? We look at the most recent structure. So for that, we can either switch it into line chart, just mark out the recent highs and lows, right? Or even the peaks and troughs. So that's one way to look at it. Want to look at it in terms of candlesticks, right? Say you can just take one of the highlighters, just trade the general market movement. You can see that still subsequent lower highs and lower lows are being formed. So that's the picture on the 4 hours. We can see that if you move down to the 1 hour time frame, okay, so this is slightly laggy. Let's just give it a while. Okay, seems to be stuck. Right, so if we're on the 4 hours time frame, let me just reload this page, see if that helps. Okay, so if you go down to the 1 hour time frame, and just move this back slightly. So on the 1 hour time frame, what we're seeing here is that price coming in to test the resistance of a channel. You also have a support term resistance area here, essentially this area where we're seeing that consolidation. So we saw on the lower time frames, right? Price coming in to test this region. We saw how price consolidated before it broke below. So that's on the 1 hour time frame, right? So in order to ensure that price is indeed respecting this zone, on the 1 hour, right? It's support term resistance area. Right, again, for that, we want to ensure that on your lower time frames, right, we're seeing that reversal. So if you notice this pullback that we're seeing on the 1 hour, if you move down to, let's say, minutes or even a 5 minutes time frame, right, this area, right, you are actually seeing subsequent higher lows and higher highs. So bullish market structure on your lower time frames coming into this zone. So let's go down to the 5 minutes, right? So on the 5 minutes, you can see that this area here, right, prices are pushing strongly up into this region, right? So right now, if we just track the latest highs and lows, you can put it in close and essentially take a look at the peaks and troughs of this movement, right? So what this shows is that where we are right now, right, it's still continuing in the bullish movement. So if we're seeing that reversal or acknowledgement of this 1 hour time frame zone, we need to first see that appear, or that reversal, signs of change and market structure happen on your lower time frames. So if that happens, right, usually what we will see is a consolidation with our price from a new low and a break of the low. And this is the first sign that we are indexing acknowledgement of this 1 hour resistance zone. Okay, so that it's for euro dollar on the 1 hour picture. Right, so currently it's testing this resistance on the 1 hour. It's also sitting on a 4 hours descending channel. But of course, if we want more confirmation, and also keeping in mind that we have FOMC minutes coming up, right? So this might cause more volatility in the dollar's movement. Okay, so that's something that we want to consider. And let's take a look at gold as well. Right, so if we take a look at gold, you can see that on gold, right? So if we go on to the higher time frame, let me just remove this, right? So on gold, where we are on the monthly, right, prices are currently sitting, testing a resistance zone. And if you move to the weekly time frame, right now we're seeing that pullback. And if you move down to the daily, right, we're seeing a change in structure here, price coming in, breaking the previous low. This is the last low. So if you take a look at the highs and lows, price came in from newer high and higher highs and higher lows before breaking the structure. And right now we're seeing that pullback. So on the 4 hours time frame, we're trying to find support areas to look at, right? So we could be seeing a deeper pullback into the daily leg and price coming into a resistance area before we actually see that reversal. So if you're on the 4 hours, right, currently prices are coming into this resistance area here. Okay, so let me just remove that, right? So what we're looking at on gold is that we're trying to find if price comes into this resistance zones, right? If it's actually acknowledging the zones, and if it does, then we could be seeing that reversal first happen on your lower time frames. Okay, so yeah, so this is where we are right now, right? So if you can see that this is the resistance area on the 4 hours. So again, right, support and resistance zone here, price coming in. So once we have, so one way to do this is that you can consider when price comes into this zone, right, just set an alert here. And one more other thing that you want to check, support resistance area, right? So this is the highest point, the lowest point. So if you take a retracement of this move from high to low, you can see the 50% retracement in line with the zone. Okay, so we could wait for price to pull back deeper into this resistance area, and this would then be aligned with that pullback that we're expecting on dollar index. And once price reaches this zone, right, we can just go to your lower time frame, either 30 minutes or 15 minutes time frame to see that side reversal. You can see that right now, if we're seeing a pullback on the daily time frame, it's still showing you bullish structure on your 30 minutes. Right, so it's still forming higher lows and higher highs moving into this zone. Okay, so that's all that we have for today, right? If you have any questions, right, please feel free to put it under the questions tab. If not, tomorrow we will be doing our edu session. So we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Okay, so I see that we have no other questions, right? With that, that's all that we have for today, right? Thanks everyone, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow.